and welcome back to my channel, Every Last One, where we discuss post-punk, new wave, and electronic music. Today, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite records from the 90s that's celebrating its 30th anniversary this week. Leftism from the group Leftfield. I'm sure you're probably familiar with many of Leftfield's contemporaries, such as Daft Punk, the Prodigy, and the Chemical Brothers, and maybe even Underworld, Orbital, and the Future Sound of London. Always seeking justice for the underdogs, today I am going to break down for you, track by track, just what made this album so special, and explain why this album's legacy hasn't been as strong as it could have been. Leftfield are a British electronic music group formed in 1989, made up of Neil Barnes and Paul Daly. The duo were highly influential in the evolution of electronic music throughout the 1990s, with press at the time proclaiming them, quote, the single most influential production team working in British dance music. Their peak happened with their debut album Leftism, released on January 30th, 1995. Followed by the album Rhythm and Stealth in 1999, and a couple of solid tracks that were on soundtracks to Danny Boyle movies such as Trainspotting and The Beach. The group would disband in 2002 and reunite to tour and release two more albums in 2015 and 2022. All right, so let's set the scene. From about 89 to 94, Britain went through the most fertile period for electronic music in global history. Underground raves exploded and were everywhere and attended by everyone and their dog. The rock kids, the prep kids, it didn't matter, but you know, we do have to rewind a bit more. UK vacationers started coming back from places like Ibiza, Spain around 85, 86 and brought this infectious music that they enjoyed while on their holidays back with them. This would develop into the acid house phenomenon during the second summer of love, which initially started in the north in nightclubs such as the Hacienda, but eventually spilled over to these abandoned warehouses and was getting huge all over the country. So parents and politicians, they're freaking out. They keep trying to shut these things down, but it's like whack-a-mole. Like, it's basically, if you were under 40 at weekend, you'll be in a warehouse or in some farmer's field somewhere, high out of your mind, dancing your face off. Things hit a tipping point with the Castle Morton Common Free Festival gaining headlines for 40,000 attendees and concern over policing, leading to the government proposing the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act in 1994. This act had a section specifically naming raves as its target, with a section banning public performance of music defined as inclusive of, quote, sounds wholly or predominantly characterized by the emission or the succession of repetitive beats. What? So this definition was described as bizarre by legal experts, and needless to say, the electronic music community were freaking out at this. The Prodigy, they team up with Pop Elite itself, and they released the middle finger anthem, Their Law, with its not-so-subtle chorus chant of fuck 'em and their law. Warp Records IDM group Autechre issued a track Flutter in which no two bars were the same beat, complete with a cheeky sticker explaining its status as exempt from the bill on the sleeve. Orbital, for their part, released their Are We Here remix EP, which included the Criminal Justice Bill remix, which was just 4 minutes of silence. Rampant protests and media coverage indicated that at the time, clearly this was backfiring and there was growing attention more and more for electronic music. Meanwhile, Orbital were getting huge as the first real group in electronic music. Their profile went mainstream after they appeared on the main stage at Glastonbury that summer, moving electronic music from the dance floor into the living room listening spectrum. This would eventually become the blueprint for the Chemical Brothers, for Prodigy, and many others. So, where were Leftfield in all of this? Well, Neil Barnes started his music career as a DJ while simultaneously playing percussion as a session musician. Inspired by his love for Africa Bambaataa, He would eventually try his hand at producing electronic music, releasing the Not Forgotten and More Than I Know singles. For the remixes to these songs, he called up Paul Daly, who he'd previously worked with when they were both percussionists in a nightclub. After the early success of those singles and the resolution of a legal dispute, the group would finally be able to come together as a duo on their next single, Release the Pressure. Their sound was a fusion of house music with dub and reggae under the umbrella of progressive house. Although, as we'll see, it's extremely limited to describe Leftism as progressive house, as they would explore a wide variety of genres on their debut. While Leftism consists of mostly tracks the duo were releasing as singles throughout the early 90s, it's a record that holds up surprisingly well as an overview of where British music was in the first half of the decade. The album begins with Release the Pressure on a cinematic note, before a dance hall groove and vocals enter, here performed by vocalist Earl 16. One thing you notice straight away is just how strong the vocals are on Leftism, similar to Massive Attack's triptych of albums throughout the 90s. Afro Left is a lot more pumping and experimental, adding Brazilian percussion and African scatting to a Marauder-esque arpeggiated bass throb. The next track, Melt, is an album highlight for me and one of my favorite chill-out jams of the 90s. This one has a great interstellar voyage vibe, and it reminds me of the krautrock band Harmonia, or even something inspired by Kraftwerk's Radioactivity track, Om Sweet Om. Song of Life is probably the most epic track here, opening with a TB303 bass line and this Bulgarian voice chant before these lush Juno pads enter. After a drawn-out halftime intro, things kick into gear with a 4 on the floor beat and a full acid freakout. Original, the best trip-hop song you've never heard, features vocals by Tony Halliday from the 90s shoegaze band Curve. I love the bass line and the drum fills on this one, and it has some great Jean-Michel Jarre synths. Black Flute picks up the pace back to the dance floor with some tribal house rhythms and transitions nicely into the next track, Space Shanty, which is another big dance track with a ton of movement and a riff reminiscent of something by Underworld or the Chemical Brothers. Inspection Check 1 brings in some big beat dub vibes we'd hear more of in the 90s from the Crystal Method's Vegas or the Prodigy's Fat of the Land albums. This one's got this infectious repeating synth stab along with a funky reggae vocal performed by Danny Red. We then get these two tracks that to me again are album highlights. Storm 3000 is a banger with epic drum and bass breakbeats and these really heavy synth acid lines. Open Up is the most famous song here, having featured on the soundtrack to the 90s crime thriller Hackers. It's hard not to hear the influence and attitude that this combination of music and frontman on Open Up had over future Prodigy tracks like Firestarter or Smack My Bitch Up. The track is dominated by a career best vocal delivered by John Lydon of Sex Pistols and Public Image Limited over a storing dance floor rhythm and these anthemic synths. Although Lydon's repeated chorus of "Burn Hollywood Burn" might feel a bit too real in light of recent environmental disaster events, this would probably be the first track anyone should check out from this record. 21st Century Poem functions as like a come down outro with spoken word lyrics delivered with some more lush cinematic synth pads. While shortlisted for the Mercury Prize in '95, Leftism would lose to Portishead's debut album, Dummy. Although the production on this record is clearly of its time, sounding very 90s, it's a hugely influential record that stood the test of time. It's impeccably sequenced, and it's like a beautiful summation of all of the genres that were happening in the incredible 5 years of British electronic music at the start of the 90s. So let's talk about how these records sound. This is the 2009 Music on Vinyl repress, and this is the 2023 reissue. They're both the same, except the sleeve is slightly more saturated on the 2023 edition on the front and the back of the sleeve. They are both gatefolds, and I have both of them on boring black vinyl. The 2009 repress Music on Vinyl has a great wide soundstage. It's cut really loud. Anyone who'd come across it should pick it up. It's definitely decent. This is the 2023 edition. This is remastered off of the 2017 remaster. Overall, it's much punchier, better bass, amazing clarity. It felt like I had an upgrade to my sound system listening to this version. So whether you go for the marbled vinyl edition or the boring black vinyl like I have here, definitely if you see the 2023 and you have a choice, go for this one because it's the better choice overall. Additionally, both of these editions have Open Up full vocal mix, which is this 9-minute amazing version of Open Up. Much better than the standard CD edition or what's available on streaming. You could probably also hear that version on the YouTubes, but definitely get one of these for that. There is also a couple of early pressings as well as recent 3LP editions that feature bonus tracks or remixes from the Leftism sessions, including a really amazing track called Filter Fish, which is worth a listen, and Cut for Life, which is a remix of Song for Life. There's a dub version of original. Those tracks aren't essential. You can get them online as well. I prefer the original album sequencing, which is why I have this version here. You know, unlike their peers, Leftfield have been less remembered because they split in 2002 and they wouldn't release another record for 16 years. In that time, the Chemical Brothers would release 5 albums. I believe Underworld released 4. Even the leisurely Massive Attack would still put out 2 LPs and 1 EP. So if you haven't heard Leftism, hopefully I've convinced you to check out some of these tracks. I am going to link the music videos for Open Up, Original, and Release the Pressure in the description below. However, I highly recommend playing this one all the way through. It really sounds like this cosmic space journey, and it helps to appreciate all of the different moods and genres when absorbed in one go. So that's gonna do it for today. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop me a like, and if you want to see more like it, let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. I have more videos you can check out right here. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.